Oscar Piastri has never been the kind of driver who cracks under pressure. He doesn't lash out over team radio, doesn't slam his steering wheel in frustration, and rarely lets emotions spill beyond the visor. But behind that quiet composure, something inside McLaren is starting to shift. Since the team introduced its major upgrade package in Austin, the balance that once defined its rise has begun to feel fragile. Lando Norris has found instant pace and confidence, while Piastri seems caught in a web of uncertainty. What used to be a subtle difference in braking style has widened into a gap that now tells the story of McLaren's internal split. In Mexico, that divide became visible. Piastri ended Friday outside the top 10, nearly 8/10 off Verstappen's pace, and for the first time this season, he sounded unsure of the cause. "We just couldn't get the grip. Too much sliding," he admitted. On paper, it's an ordinary complaint, but underneath it signals something deeper. The moment when faith in the car starts to fade, when a driver stops chasing milliseconds and starts questioning direction. Before we break down how that spiral began, a quick reminder: if you enjoy deep F1 analysis like this, the kind that looks beyond results and digs into the dynamics shaping them, make sure to subscribe and stay tuned, because what's unfolding inside McLaren right now might define not just Piastri's future, but the team's entire identity heading into 2026. Back in the early months of the season, Piastri looked like the perfect symbol of McLaren's new era. Calm, precise, relentlessly efficient. His performances often mirrored Norris's, sometimes surpassing them on raw execution. He was the quiet force pushing a revitalized team forward. But as development accelerated, so did divergence. The latest upgrade, designed to help the car generate more rear stability through mid-corner, unintentionally tilted the balance toward Norris's aggressive rotation style. Piastri, who thrives on a smoother input and predictable rear grip, suddenly found himself chasing a moving target. That difference, almost invisible on telemetry, has translated into a visible change in confidence. Norris has been attacking corners with the same flair that once characterized Verstappen's best weekends. Piastri, by contrast, looks restrained, searching for a car that no longer responds the way he expects. It's not a collapse, but a slow bleed, the kind that turns a near-equal partnership into an internal hierarchy. And that hierarchy might not be purely about speed. Juan Pablo Montoya recently claimed Norris's contract includes clauses protecting his number one status, effectively limiting how far McLaren can pivot its car philosophy around Piastri. The team hasn't confirmed it, but in Formula One, perception is often just as powerful as truth. When one driver feels the car evolving away from him, while the other gains political and technical momentum, the cracks begin to show. Jacques Villeneuve added more fuel by calling for McLaren to abandon its papaya rules, a reference to the team's habit of maintaining harmony at the expense of competition. His message was blunt: let them race. To Villeneuve, the best teams are built on controlled chaos, not corporate balance. It's a sentiment that echoes through history. When both drivers are unleashed, true performance is revealed, even if it risks breaking something in the process. But right now, McLaren doesn't look ready to let go. There's an air of caution, understandable given how far they've come from the chaos of 2023, but dangerous in a fight where ruthlessness defines the champions. Even Lewis Hamilton, when asked about McLaren's internal dynamic, didn't hesitate. If they want to beat Max, they have to be cutthroat. Coming from someone who's lived through the Verstappen wars of 2021, it wasn't advice, it was a warning. Verstappen himself, meanwhile, stands as the unintentional mirror to McLaren's situation. When asked about the Norris-Piastri tension, he shrugged it off with characteristic calm. "If they want to beat us, they can't fight each other," he said. There was no malice, no smugness, just the plain statement of a driver who understands what unity looks like inside a dominant team. At Red Bull, every upgrade lands seamlessly. Every change fits Verstappen's rhythm. That's what separates supremacy from chaos. Direction. In Mexico, Verstappen's control was absolute. He led both Friday sessions with the ease of someone who has already solved the weekend. Piastri, by contrast, left the garage looking for answers. McLaren later issued a health update after he was briefly taken to the medical centre. Precautionary, but symbolic of a weekend where nothing felt quite right. Even Norris admitted, "We're behind here. We're struggling to make the car work." What makes this phase so defining for Piastri is that it isn't about raw results. It's about how a driver reacts when the balance tips against him. Politically, technically, and psychologically. McLaren's rise was built on a sense of equality, on two young drivers pushing each other to higher standards. But equality only lasts as long as both sides are moving in sync. Once upgrades start choosing sides, a team inevitably does too. And yet, this is the crucible every great driver faces. Hamilton went through it with Rosberg. Verstappen did with Ricciardo. Even Norris, once overshadowed by Carlos Sainz, had to carve his way out of the shadow through raw aggression and consistency. For Piastri, this might be his version of that test. Not a question of talent, but of adaptability under invisible pressure. The irony is that Piastri's personality, calm, thoughtful, precise, might now be his biggest challenge. Formula One rewards subtlety only when it's paired with political aggression. Norris has learned that balance. He's become vocal, assertive, and strategically loud when needed. Piastri, meanwhile, remains the stoic technician, a virtue in the car, but a risk in the politics surrounding it. From the outside, McLaren insists the harmony remains, but behind the PR calm, the numbers don't lie. Since the Austin update, Norris has consistently extracted more from the package, while Piastri's sessions have been filled with small frustrations. Inconsistent balance, narrower setup windows, higher tyre degradation. These are not fatal flaws, but they accumulate. In Formula One, the gap between balance and chaos can be a single weekend. Yet amid all this, there's a strange sense of opportunity. Pressure exposes, but it also refines. If Piastri can turn this dip into a lesson, if he can find speed not from comfort but from compromise, he might emerge stronger than before. The foundations of his craft are still solid: consistency, tyre management, and race intelligence. What he lacks right now is the spark, the edge that transforms a fast driver into a team leader. What's fascinating about this chapter is how it tests McLaren's identity as much as it tests Piastri's. For all their talk of equality and development, they're now facing the same dilemma that once haunted Mercedes and Red Bull. Do you build around your fastest driver or the one with the most potential? Both can't coexist forever, and if the internal politics don't settle soon, McLaren risks turning a two-driver asset into a one-driver problem. By the time the paddock leaves Mexico, the headlines will likely focus on Verstappen's relentless control. Another weekend, another quiet domination. But just beneath that narrative lies something far more intriguing. A McLaren story teetering on the edge of transformation. Piastri won't show frustration. That's not his way. But somewhere between the tenths he's losing and the calm he's projecting, a truth is forming. One that could define his trajectory for years to come. Because in Formula One, silence is never just silence. Sometimes it's the sound of something breaking. And the question now is simple. When it finally does, will Oscar Piastri still be the driver holding the steering wheel, or the one watching it slip away?